Hey, welcome back to Her Restored Spirit podcast. My name is Tami and I'm your host. And I just came off a crazy week. I just came off a crazy month. So, what I've learned about this last month is that even though Heaven's Day was 11 years, this is our 11th one that we experienced, the 12th if you count the actual day. Um, I still need to build in some grace and space in my life during the time of Heaven's Day. I still need to those activities. Like it's okay that I pre-plan in advance that the week before and the week after I don't have any major events. I know we can't help the school calendar, so we have school events, and it's not just for me. It's I realized that I needed to put some time to protect my kids and give them space too, because well, life is emotional. How many times have we been hit by something like a wave of emotion that we did not actually intend to have? Um, so I just wanted to share that. And I'm just coming off of last week was Heaven's Day. It was a good day. The kids and I and Kyle, we spent some time together. We had crazy events. Like it was a community day for the kids. So it's one day a week they go to school with their friends. We had debate and we had different activities, and it was a normal day on the outside, and on the inside it was really heavy. Like it just having space and time. So don't push through if you don't think you should. Like give yourself time to not have to push through. And then that's what I've learned. Next week or next year, I should say. Next year I'm going to like block off a little bit of time in the week before, in the week of Heaven's Day, for margin, for rest, for time to get a little emotional, and it be okay. Um, I appreciate all the support and messages. And whew, man, last week also, I had my first expert guest series, and I also had a money mindset workshop. Last week was insane. I had everything. I had audio issue, so I'm still working on the audio issue for my expert series, so I can get the replay out. I think I might just create a. So those of you who are waiting for it, I think I might just I can strip the audio and turn it into like a podcast and send it to you that way. So I think I might do that. Just have it like that for you, so that way at least you can get to it and you can hear it. Because my friend Jenny, she shared some amazing tips and things that I even was like, okay, I can give myself grace there, and I do need to shift my perspective a little bit with that. And then I just shared a little bit about discovering you and why it's important to create an identity. Over the next, well, slowly, God has been revealing what my purpose is. Like I felt, I was a therapist for years, and I knew that that was something that was important. And I love people. I love it. I love talking to you. I love being with you. I love hearing your story. I love supporting you. And so I knew that that was part of what he had me, um, what he called me to. Like he highlighted people's stories to me, and trying to shift a little bit because I've recognized, and many of you have already, so like, of course, I thought that's what you did. But one of the things that I am slowly doing, like the series, which I will continue in just a moment, I've been unhooking myself with these things that I've aligned with for my life, or that kept me safe. And it's like, okay, it's time to not be so safe. Jesus didn't do safe. And so, one of the things that I believe why we should work on our identity, why we should understand who God created us to be, and why it's important to actually dissect it and look at what parts of your identity do you want to keep, what parts do you want to grow, and which parts do you want to set down. Because there's habits, there's thoughts, there's old stories that you can set down about your identity that does no longer has to define you. That's one of the areas. It's like your story does not have to define you. You get to decide where in your story you are. Your story is not you. Your test does become your testimony. And that's one of the things that I've recognized is that I see people's testimonies when I see them. I was talking to a friend of my daughter's. She's 13, and for a 13-year-old, she's already been through a lot. I love this little girl with all my heart, and God placed her in our lives a few years ago. Um, and now I see why. And she texted me today and was apologizing for something that someone in her family did. Someone that caused me harm, not in a strong way. Um, I was protected a lot, but it's still, and I responded to her. I was like, girly, it is not your responsibility to carry the burden of actions of an adult. What we get to decide is who you're going to be as you grow. You've been through this traumatic event, and I see how years of this has shaped her. And and I see how she's coming and she's becoming a young woman, and I see how she's thinking through things and how the old ways of doing things are they formed, and now like her paradigm kind of shifted. Her paradigm broke apart when the truth came out. And um so just know, like, it's not my story to tell, so I can't share more details, but know that this it deeply affected this little girl. And with that, she was worried about, because she calls me Aunt Tammy. She comes over often. I love her dearly. Um, yeah, like she's just part of our family. And when she's discovering who she is, she's realizing and she's carrying this burden. She's carrying this burden that's not hers to carry. She's carrying this guilt and this shame that is not hers to carry. And I just wanted to know, it was on my heart because how many of you are still carrying the burden or the shame or the stories that are not your responsibility to carry, that are not for you? It's not something that you did. It's not something that you contributed to. It's not something that you even had a a play in. Like it just happened around you or to you or about you or with you in the room, and you still carry that burden and that guilt, and you shouldn't have to. One reason why I think it's so important that we look at stories like that, because I think this little girl has a testimony to share how she was gaslighted at a very young age, the cycle of abuse that played out, how the outside of looked good, but there was something deep going on inside, and that wasn't right. And here she was growing up in that and trying to figure out what life really looked like when you're trying to discover what life is and how to act in situations, and nothing was congruent in your life. And how many times do we do that? We stay with old stories. We stay with old identities. And when we stop and we look at it intentionally, and who are we being? Are we allowing those to keep us doing the same habits, doing the same things? Um, and honestly, I'm going into a little bit of next week's podcast, because next week I was going to talk about unhook yourself from the way it's always been done. Um, this week I'm talking about unhooking yourself from what others think. When we're developing our identity, so many times we look at what others think. We what if what will our people think if we start to change and shift? If we really look at our priorities and realize that we're not living out our priorities or our values that we have chosen for ourselves, and yet the outward appearance and our activities, our money, our schedule, our the people we hang out with. And what if we find that there's an incongruence there? Like if there's something not right and we want to shift, we want to grow, we want to grow to know who God created us to be. And you can't go through that process without changing. And one of the things I want to encourage you to do is to recognize that, well, one is we're supposed to work as if we're working for the Lord and not for others. Like we're not supposed to worry about what other people think. We Others do not know what we know, and we don't know what they know. So it's not just that we're special, everyone's special, right? We all get a medal for that. But they don't know what we know. I've talked a lot about God highlighting different things for you. And the reason why I say it that way is because what do you notice? Or what conversations, what things in the world, what values, what does God take a yellow highlighter and you notice more than other people? There's a lot of things that I notice that other people around me don't. So I started recognizing, and there's others, when someone will say something like, didn't you see that? I was like, no, but by golly, like it was there. God highlighted it for them. What does God highlight for you? Because I guarantee that that starts to give you an insight to who he's created you to be and who he's created you to impact. And so remember that when we are changing, we have to unhook ourselves from what other people think. We just do. I love my friends. I think I've made it clear that my people are so important to me. And I recognize that some of the things that I do, they don't understand. Some of my best friends have no clue really what my my focus is or where I'm going. And they don't need to. But what I needed to recognize is if there's things that get them a little uncomfortable, starting a podcast, which now I think I'm like over 120 episodes, well over 2 years into this thing. And they're like, it's so much work. Why? No one's going to listen. Why would you want to do that? Do you have things to say? That's once you start, that's a long time. It's a lot of work. And here I am, 120 episodes in, and I still have a lot to say. God has given me a lot to say. I'm a talker. So it works out. The thing is if I would have let that deter me, if I would have been like, yeah, you're right, that is a lot of work. And what do I have to say? It would have discredited and downplayed what God had placed on my heart. If I worried about what my friends think, and let me tell you, a lot of these unhook yourself messages are ones that I've had to, or I am currently talking to myself. I like people around me to be happy. I like them to like me. I'm somewhat of a people pleaser. I'm learning that I don't need to please everyone. But I don't even have to please my friends and my family, which is really hard. And it's a unique position to be in. And not for a bad thing, like not because I'm going off and doing something crazy, but it's because they're trying to keep me safe with their comments. They don't understand. They don't see what God's highlighted for me. They don't see that when I hear someone talk about what they've been through, what I see is a victor inside of them and hope and how they can share that message with others. I see impact. I see how they've overcome something. And it's so interesting because my friend will hear the same story. And she's like, oh, that was such a great story. And I'm like, man, her story is just about to blow wide open. I was like, that's just the tip of it. I was like, I see how she can do so much with it. So I see how her test becomes her testimony. And one of the things that like when we're building a business, it's like, what story can you tell that your competitors or the other people in your realm can't? And it's one of the stories that I can tell is the fact that I took some really hard situations and I flipped them around and I'm helping people with them. I get to help people see the opportunities in their stories and see how they can redefine their stories. I get to do that because I didn't let the influence of my friends stop me. I did have friends who encouraged me and who kind of didn't get it, but knew that there was something there. I had friends who didn't understand, but encouraged anyway. I had friends who I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And they didn't ask any questions. I didn't tell them any information. They said, all right, I'll support you. You as well. What has God been highlighting for you that's a little bit out of your comfort zone? That you need to make some changes for, but it's really hard because we all have these roles that we play in our families, at work, with our friend groups. Like we all have these roles that we play. This harmony, this congruence, this I can't even think of the clinical word for it, but we're not going to worry about that. But it is we all have everyone expects they know what to expect from us and we know what to expect from our friends, and when one thing changes it throws the whole balance off and it makes people uncomfortable. It doesn't mean that it's not worth doing. It just means that we're going to have to shift a little bit. If you're used to walking into a family gathering and being the only one who cleans up, or being the one who um, doesn't have an opinion on things when you really do, and you decide to voice your opinion, things things get a little uncomfortable because people don't know how to respond. When you throw things off balance like that, when you shift focus, when you create boundaries and keep them, when you start portraying your values, start living out your values and priorities, when you stop people pleasing, when you have a preference, when you're not they're used to you just going with the what everybody else wants, it's going to get uncomfortable for you and for the people around you. Doesn't make it wrong. So many times we limit and we'll keep our mouth shut because we don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to worry. We don't want to make anybody upset. We don't want to offend. But sometimes it's the one thing that we need to do. Because if nothing changes, nothing ever changes. Sometimes we have to be the one who shakes it up a bit. We have to be the ones who step out and get uncomfortable and give other people that privilege as well. And so it's also not your responsibility to make sure everyone else in the room is comfortable. This little girl, it was not her responsibility to apologize to me. The person who could apologize, I've already forgiven. I see why God placed them in my life. I see why I went through what I did with them. It's because of this little girl. I see that. And I was able to see what she went through and see from a different perspective. It's not her responsibility to make me comfortable. And yet so many times we feel guilty if we shift, if we change, and someone else's idea is thrown off a little bit or what they expect. Give yourself space to grow and to shift and to change and to have a preference and to put your boundaries up, to raise those boundaries and put a wall around them. It is okay. Remember, it's your test that becomes your testimony. I can't be a testimony of someone else's test or someone else's story. Others may not see how God is using you or what he's placed on your heart or how you feel like, no, I really need to get out of this rut. I need to get from I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling stressed. I'm feeling anxious. I'm getting ready to enter a new season. I have this feeling that something needs to be done and I don't know what to do, but I want to do something. But my friends say, oh, don't worry, it'll be done anyway. Someone else will do it. But what if God called you to it? What if that's something he's highlighting for you? I would encourage you, get into this habit of looking to see and just thinking through your events. What is God highlighting in this moment? What is he taking a yellow or pink or purple or green or blue highlighter to that you notice that others around you don't? What are some themes that you notice? Because that's going to be like that's gold. We all, because of our circumstances, because of our experiences, because of the things we went through, we see things a little different. What does God highlight for you? I would love to know. I think it's the coolest thing that multiple people can have one conversation and we all highlight something different from it. I was part of this program. I was working on my master level certification for neurocoaching, which I just graduated from, and I am so excited. And one of the things we did is we did a popcorn coaching. So we had this willing participant who she came and she knew that we were certified neurocoaches, and that we were going to the three of us we were going to coach her for about 30 minutes. And the three of us, though we are neurocoaches, so we follow the same model for the most part, our focus are very different. So our questions are different. And so she knew and we would ask questions based on what we saw. And it was phenomenal. I told him, I was like, well, we need to start doing this we need to go on the circuit and start doing group coaching, popcorn coaching, just because we were able to pull out things simply because we saw words. We saw her change positions. We each had a different perspective. And so it was such a cool experience because we got to see that. And I saw how like another fellow coach, how some of the questions she asked are ones that I wrote down because I was like, oh, I didn't even think about going that direction. If I was worried about what other people thought, so I instead of button in and asking the question, there are some things that the lady who is being coached would have never discovered, or it would have taken her a long time to discover. It would have, if I wasn't there, part of that, and coming from the perspective of, well, who are you and who do you want to be? Then that element would not have been discovered. The same as if you don't use what God has highlighted to you, if you don't start putting that together and noticing and understanding how He's placed it on your heart, we are missing out on what God has for us. So we cannot worry about what other people think. Those people who love you and support you will get over it, or will support you even though they don't understand, or will recognize that, wow, I need to get uncomfortable too. Maybe that's what they were waiting for, someone to be brave enough to break the cycle so that way they could too. But don't worry so much about what other people are thinking. Unhook yourself from that. Recognize that you may make people uncomfortable. But if God is going to use us the way He wants and the way we want, let's face it, we all want to be used by God in a way that's powerful and impactful. We have to be willing to get a little uncomfortable and make others uncomfortable. So don't let that stop you from sharing. Now, I have a group coming up. I have a few ladies who have already signed up and said yes, and I want to discover who I am and what's next for me. I want to understand what God highlights for me and why. I have a few spots left. This is not your ordinary course or coaching program. This is time. You're not going to just watch a video and respond in a Facebook group. This is actual live. I will meet with you weekly, and I have step by step of let's discover who you are, who God created you to be, and start to see what God's highlighting for you. It's something I promise you won't regret it. I promise you'll see something in you that you never saw before. We don't focus on the things you're not good at. We've got that nailed. We know what we do there. But what we focus on is your strengths. What we focus on who God's created us to be, who we want to be, rather than the things that we're not. We'll talk about some habits that we want to break. We'll talk more about the habits we want to create. So if you're interested, get on my calendar. Please, please, please get on my calendar and let's talk. That's it. That's what you got to do. And that one little step, and I promise you, when we meet, it's just like you and I talking. We're just going to sit and we're going to chat. I'm going to ask you a couple questions about what's possible, and I'm going to help you see that you're capable. And don't waste any time. Time is our most precious resource. If I know now, if I knew it way back when, if I knew it 10 years ago, 11 years ago, 12 years ago, how different would my life be? But the thing is that there's a moment where like we can't dwell on the fact that we didn't know it. The key is we know it now. It may not have been your fault, but now that you know it is your responsibility. I am so, so, so excited about this group. The last group of ladies who went through this, none of them stayed the same. And I would love hopefully I'm going to ask them if they will share some of their experiences. And I have a little bit of video clips too, that them sharing what they got out of the program. But overall, know that you're worthy. If God's highlighting it for you, write it down and notice and send me a message. I'd love to know what it is. But with that, friend, choose joy until joy chooses you. Bye for now.